In this podcast, I'm going to quickly take you through Module 1.1, and it's on pages 2 to 3 in Myers. It would be helpful if you had those pages open. One of the major points that Myers is trying to make is that psychology slowly emerges as its own science through the integration of ideas from other disciplines, so that there were ancient philosophers and philosophy all the way up to the 18th century that actually influenced and were dealing with some of the issues that would become prominent in psychology. Also biology and other sciences, as well as things like theology as well in religious studies. So all of these, some of these ideas in these other disciplines actually become the ingredients, so to speak, for psychological thought and inquiry. Now, there's a key term that Myers introduces to you on page 3, and it's empiricism. Empiricism has to do with how humans gain knowledge. And the belief here is that knowledge comes from experience. But our experience is based upon our interaction with the world, which is based upon our senses, right? Think sight, hear, sound, touch, etc. Right? Sounds pretty unproblematic because it has become the basis for how we do modern science. Okay, so empiricism is linked to modern science. It is the idea that knowledge comes from experience. However, in modern science, it's a certain type of experience, almost like an asterisk next to this. It's the type of experience based upon observation and experimentation, in which we manipulate factors. So observation, experimentation, and where we attempt to be objective and use measurements. Sorry about the handwriting. And the pen, it's just not working as well as I'd like. So it's a certain type of experience that we're looking for. One way to understand a lot of these concepts is to think about them as having foils, or think of them in conversation with other thoughts or other types of theories. So prior to empiricism becoming the main way in which the West claims that we can gain knowledge, there was also another idea, which some people still hold to, called rationalism. And this might just help you understand empiricism. You don't need to know rationalism for the test, but rationalism basically takes a different approach. It says, no, we can't trust our senses. We can't trust our sense perception. Knowledge is based upon reason alone. And some of these philosophers, many of them ancient, believe that we were born with knowledge and we forget it. And our goal is so whenever we learn, what we really do is remembering. So they don't believe we're born a blank slate. So for instance, John Locke said, no, we're born a blank slate. And he used the Latin for that, tabula rasa. Okay? Now, another idea here is what I want you to do when you're thinking about empiricism. Empiricism is basically what Wundt and Titchener use as they do their early experiments. They rely on their senses, and they're primarily testing and analyzing sensory and perception. Also, behaviorism strongly embraces the idea of empiricism and would completely reject rationalism. As a matter of fact, most modern psychology, not all, embraces empiricism to a certain extent, as does most science. Now, however, there are some perspectives even in modern psychology, in which empiricism plays a very deprioritized role. That would be humanistic and psychoanalytic. Okay, these two are more based upon theory and things that we can't find evidence to support necessarily. Okay, so again, those two perspectives, empiricism plays a much more diminished role. Okay, but remember, empiricism is the key to the modern scientific outlook. Again, has to do with knowledge is gained through experience. Science takes empiricism and says it's not just any old experience. The experience has to be kind of codified, if you will. It has to be done through experimentation, measurement, and careful observation. So they extend empiricism to try to define the type of experiences needed to produce verifiable evidence and knowledge. So that's the end of the first vodcast.